this goes. Which book is this? There's a hornbill, there's a peacock, and I think that's a kingfisher. Any guesses? This is from the book. I don't know whether you can read it. It's from the book. Kerala Pakshil? No. Yes, it's Mrigacharitam. 27 pages of Mrigacharitam talks about birds in Malayalam. It has got birds found in India. It has also got ostrich, penguin, etc. also. It's describing birds. What is so important? It was published in 1860. 2 years before the first book on Indian birds published by journal. Malayalam has always been the first. The first book about birds in Malayalam came even before the first English book. So, but you will also say that this is more like a popular textbook introducing birds, etc. You know, it's scientific. It did talk about birds. It did talk about how light the birds were. It did talk about how the toe configuration is for different birds. Specifically mentioned parakeets and woodpecker has got a different kind of toe configuration. So it was still a scientific publication. It was only talking about 27 birds. So before we go further, we probably need to identify when you say past, present, future of ornithology. What is ornithology? What is its science? So look at this way. Last 3 days, you would have heard many presentations. So some people were talking about what. Some people were talking about how. And quite a few people were talking about why. In other words, just look at it. What is actually an observation? How is the mechanism of that observation? And why is the explanation? To give an example, take Malabar grey hornbill. It is found in the wet forest of Wayanad. That's an observation. And how it survives, like, okay, it has a nest where it goes inside and seals itself, is the mechanism of it. And why do they do it is the explanation of it. Now, we may feel that some question is easier, some question is difficult. That's not really true. All of them are ornithology. All of them had its own easy questions, its own difficult questions. There are some very difficult questions in what also. So all this together constitute ornithology. So people at different era attacked different questions at different point in time. So we may be at a different era, but there is always a reason to do both, all three, what, how, and why. So let's just go back a little bit further to Jordan again. Jordan is probably the one of the first ornithologists in India. He was in Talasheri for 5 years. So there are some notes of what Jordan did in Talasheri during 5 years. So probably the first scientific contribution from Kerala came from, I think, Jordan's notes from Talasheri. But that was little. There was not too much which was done. But Travancore actually changed the game. Travancore, there were a few people, mostly planters. They came as planters. They became later conservator of forest, or they later became museum curator, became substantial contribution into ornithology. So one is Ferguson. I don't know if Shamal is there. Thanks to Shamal for this particular photo, which came out recently. He was a planter who became finally the curator of the Trivandrum Museum. Baudelaire brothers, one of the Baudelaire stayed back and became a conservator. Stewart also contributed in terms of nest. So they built a lot of ornithology in the 19th century, which has become a fundamental basis for comparison even now. Their list runs to about 350 species, so which is more or less 70 to 80% of what we know from Travancore. So that's a substantial contribution. Compared to that, Malabar, I would say, is slightly, little slower there. Davison is a fantastic ornithologist employed by Hume. He collected across South Asia and Southeast Asia. Sometimes he was in Nilgiris, sometimes he was in Wayanad. So there are notes of Davison from Wayanad. And there are a few others. Rhodes Morgan, a very interesting character. He was like, I think, a conservator of forest of Malabar. He wrote something about birds. A.P. Kinloch was specifically in Nellambadis. He wrote something about birds. But Malabar, if you really look at it, compared to Travancore in the 19th century, Malabar contribution to ornithology has been less. So we have lesser information from Malabar here. And Some of these are not just papers. These are like specimens in Trivandrum Museum. So that female lesser florican was collected from Akulam Lake in Trivandrum in 1900, I think. So that was collected there. Sociable lapwing was also collected from very way, or the only known specimen of social lapwing from South India, even now, was collected. Two specimens were collected from a flock of 4 birds, again from Trivandrum in 1901. Wood snipe, very rare now. There is a specimen from high ranges here. So there are some of these have actually become artifacts which we can go back and refer to, like Preeta was saying that these are probably the annals of science where we can actually go back and do something. Prashant was asking whether we will be able to do DNA sequencing. Hopefully in the future there are people doing it elsewhere. We should be able to get the technique. So at that point in time we probably will be able to do it. The next game change of course happened with Salim Ali when he came for the Travancore Cochin survey in 1933. This is the tramway, the famous tramway from Paramikulam till Chalakudi. So yeah, you can see Salim Ali sitting there and his wife Temina just looking out from the carriage. They covered Travancore and Cochin, 19 locations south of Palakkad Gap, systematically for 1 year, and all these locations they stayed for 6 to 8 days collecting specimens. So that was the kind of work which Salim Ali did, which became a book. Travancore and Cochin, Birds of Travancore and Cochin, one of the first books, bird books for a princely state in India. And that became Birds of Kerala later. But he wrote something in that. I'll just read it out. It is unlikely that many bird species inhabiting Kerala or visiting the country as regular seasonal migrants have escaped enumeration, or that any novelties still remain to be discovered and described hence. Therefore, energy may now be profitably directed to more promising channels. He said that, yeah, I done everything. You guys do other things. After that, our bird watchers have added 200 more bird species to Kerala list. So, yeah, that's a what part of it, because Salim Ali told that, oh, I already got all the species, but see what has happened. Now, the field ornithology, I think that all started in 1950s with this person. Look at his contribution. Think of it, just after independence, an English professor, not trained formally in zoology, was publishing enormously on a hobby which is till then very anglicized, elite kind of a hobby, where he was writing from different parts of Kerala, different parts of Andhra Pradesh, different parts of South India. That was an amazing piece of contribution on which right now this particular entire crowd is sitting. We are all here because of some of those seeds which he has actually sown in all of us by writing so extensively in Malayalam, in dailies. Look at this particular journal which he has written, like 1950s he has written that. That became books, and that became actually the horse on which we are all riding. So that's when the field ornithology changed, when some of those notes were actually about how, and sometimes also thinking about the why. So he actually moved into those field ornithology, studying breeding biology and trying to come out with theories why it could be that. So it's still instructive to go back and see some of his notes which are actually getting digitized by the Hindu Jordan Foundation, I think. But I think it's a great material for the archive also. So that's where the field ornithology started, and people started getting interested in birds, not just as specimens, but as an observation. Since then, things have progressed. Citizen science in different forms have progressed. Asian Waterbird Census is probably the first citizen science initiative, which started in Kerala in 1987. Still going strong. Quite a number of wetlands are getting covered every year. Bird surveys, again, was something which started from Kerala. So 1990 was the first bird survey in Silent Valley. I think some of you, Dr. Shantaram, participated, I think. So that's when the bird survey started, and then we just did an inventory sometime in 2008, and we have kind of covered most of Kerala forest, and now it's too difficult to figure out how many surveys are happening. Every year some 5-6 surveys are happening across Kerala. So that's a culture which has come out sometime in 1990, and those became the times when the bird watchers used to assemble together, exchange notes, which is now becoming bigger and bigger, so we need a festival now to exchange notes. PhD in ornithology. So Calicut University had an ornithology center. So there were PhDs coming out of that center. Then there are also institutes like SACON, sometimes WAYANAD, which resulted in some PhDs coming out. So I'm not going to talk about a lot here, but there are species and species group based PhDs here. For example, Shantaram Sir did in white-bellied woodpecker, and other people who has done in drongos, barbets, bulbuls, several of them, and some of them come out with published papers, which has become some kind of a baseline knowledge on a particular species and sometimes a species group. Yeah. And some of the PhDs were all not on species groups. They sometimes on bird communities, forest communities, or wetland communities, sometimes on coastal habitats, paddy fields. So these kind of PhDs have also come and leveled up the game in terms of knowledge which we have about Kerala birds. Two important surveys here. I think Shashi Kumar sir was there, but he is not there. Vishnu is here, where Kerala Forest Department wanted to do the same trail of Salim Ali 75 years later. They did the same 19 localities across Kerala during 2009-10 time frame. They repeated it in Malabar also, where Salim Ali did not go. They did a survey fresh there. These came out during 2010-12 time frame. So that's a time when some of the information was getting crystallized into some publishable matter. When this publication came out in 2011, I use it as some kind of a baseline, saying, okay, fine, we are reached here. This is the baseline information. From here, let us proceed here. So 356 species were confirmed in birds of Kerala. This particular book had got 453. So there has been an addition in terms of number of species. Many of them regularly occurring, in fact. So this is a stage where things are changing rapidly. From here on, it's more or less present from how we are actually seeing things. So from this book onwards, so this is where we currently stand in terms of the data in eBird. So some of you would have seen this. Ashwin has shown a version of it. Each dot is a eBird checklist from Kerala. I am not shown the boundary of Kerala here. The boundary of Kerala is self-traced by the checklist location. And you could see the increase in number of observations here. Each dot is the number of contributions of that year. It's not cumulative, it's of that year. So every year, the contribution is bigger than the previous year, except one COVID year, you can see a small spike here. So that's the kind of opportunity which we are sitting on, the way in which it's already there and it's growing. You heard about this talk yesterday or day before yesterday when Roshan talked about it. This is the continuous monitoring happening across Kerala since 2014, studying the colonial water birds in heronries across Kerala here. So this is another set of knowledge building up. First state systematic bird atlas. At that point in time, the Asia's largest bird atlas was completed in 2021. Came out with some publications here. One of the one is this epic one. I don't know how many of you are here who are authors here. Current Science published this with 225 authors. So I keep showing this everywhere I'm going. This is how citizen science happens in Kerala. And I think people are now discussing that it's time to repeat this one more time and see what has changed. A few other activities which are happening here, which are about life histories of birds. Most of it coming from this district. I think I haven't done that, but probably if you list all the life history studies happened across India and enumerate which district had the maximum number of life history studies, that most likely is WAYANAD. Most likely is WAYANAD. So Jordan's Basa, breeding, something about rufous woodpecker, greater painted snipe, and we also heard Karthika talking about mixed hunting flocks, then we had Abhijit talking about it. So many of life history studies is happening across Kerala and particularly in WAYANAD. I have done a few selections. There are some life history studies which has happened outside also. But yeah, just to build a story, I have shown most of the things from WAYANAD. Biogeography and molecular systematics, very little is happening in India, very little. And I think the only papers on this topic which has come out in the last several years is this and an ILAD paper. Most of it has come from one single work. There is still work happening in the Western Ghats, but they are not happening inside Kerala. They are mostly happening in Nilgiris and Palni Hills. So this is an opportunity which we are not cashing. We are sitting on species, we are sitting on forest, but we probably are not doing enough in this particular world to understand our own biogeography. Modeling and projection, because this data came up, there has been now interest in terms of modeling. It mostly is happening from the Dr. Nami's lab in Thrissur. So this is a very famous paper. Everybody was talking about it. P-folds are increasing. So, and there is a projection that it's going to increase even more. It's going to expand the range. It's going to increase in numbers. There are also studies on endemic birds, both black and orange and needle flycatcher. There is also a model done on white-bellied shortwing. So things are started there. Modeling things are started here. I would not say that we have reached anywhere. We have just started doing modeling there. Systematic monitoring. After the atlas, there has been efforts from the citizen scientists to do regular systematic monitor in the beaches, surveying the raptors. So this initiative have also started. So this is where more or less we are here right now. So going a little further, I tried to do a few things. We have some strength. We have some strength which we can actually cash upon. Then there are some needs. Because we are a tropical state, there are some needs. And there is also some cases where we know nothing. Looking at 3 axes, I kind of come out with some suggestion of what could be the scope of future ornithology. It's of course open for more inputs, more ideas, how to shape it. But these have been the way in which I have tried to prioritize what should be the future. We don't know what that will happen, but that's mostly what the next few slides are about. So we are sitting on, this is our strength, I would say. We are sitting on massive amount of data. And I don't think we have done enough justice to analyze it, to come out with inferences which are relevant for Kerala. So if you are able to identify patterns, so here I am actually talking about everything here. You can see calibration here. Ashin talked about calibration. We need calibrations. We need other patterns. We need weather patterns. We need land use patterns. We need demographic patterns. We need light patterns. So we have patterns sitting outside. Can we combine ornithology data with patterns, bring out analytics and bring out inferences which can actually become strong tools for ecological actions, conservation actions? Can we do that? So there are people doing outside, for example, they are using eBird data and doing modeling in Cornell. You can see the distribution map of WAYANAD laughingfish. We can do better because we know exactly what is happening here. We have the right set of people, but there is some amount of competence built up required here so that we can actually produce work which are more relevant for this particular space. So this is one opportunity. Just to give an example, this is a look at this live, and I hope it plays. This live animation of habitat suitability and distribution of grey wagtail across its entire range. You can see how the modeling is able to predict from north to south migration of this particular charismatic species, which is so close to many of us because they come exactly at the same date, at the same place every year. So much is possible. It's being done elsewhere. We probably need to actually cast it in a way in which we can also utilize it for actions in our state. Second topic, forest birds are declining, even in intact forest. Our endemics are declining. This is from the State of India's Birds report. We don't know why. Malabar grey hornbill, which is there here, has declined as per State of India's Birds. When the Kerala Bird Atlas was modeled and predicted in the future, there is a future decline being predicted here. Not for all endemics. Grey-fronted green pigeon is doing fine. Malabar grey hornbill is not doing fine. What is happening? What's the mechanism? Why is it declining? We don't know. It's not only in Kerala. There are papers which clearly says that in intact forest in Amazon, birds are declining. So it's a global phenomenon. We have a chance to do research here. There are things happening here. We would want people to actually figure out why it is. Could it be insects? We don't know. There's clearly an insect decline. I'm sure that Preeta would agree with this. Globally, all invertebrates are declining, and that's a major food source for birds, at least during one life history period of it, like during the nestling period. So could it be that? We don't know. That's something which we need to do. One tool we could use, of course, we have done surveys, but I think you'll start hearing this more and more often, what is known as passive acoustic monitoring. So the device on the right side is called an audio moth. It's a small Kuti device, which you can configure and put in the forest. You can configure many devices, and then it can start recording at regular intervals, and then you can analyze the data. It's very helpful to do these kind of things in a very systematic in forest. I don't think we have done that in Kerala. There are others outside in Western Ghats, people have done it. I don't think we have done it. But it's extremely good because it can do multi-species monitoring, not just birds, other things also. But of course, there are intra-species variations we have to understand. Some birds are better monitored than others. Automatic detection, there are algorithms like BirdNet, which is trained, I can actually do this identification en masse. Training is complex, we need to learn it. Scaling is good, but of course power and storage limitations are there. It can do round the year, round the clock kind of monitoring. But yes, we have harsh weather, so we probably need customizations here. Soundscapes, whatever the Shantaram sir mentioned, it's something which we could actually do it. But of course, understand it's very sensitive to external noise. So we have to make sure that we deploy it in a way which is really relevant for Kerala, so that it can actually become like this micro-climatic climate change mini observatories. A pattern which is emerging over this discussion and also in the discussions in the amphitheater during is that landscapes are changing. Some are changing more frequently, some are changing less frequently, but landscapes are changing. This is a field where we actually need to study what's happening in Kerala. Open landscape becoming forest, forest becoming production landscapes, wetlands becoming urban spaces, and all these conversions. No? There's a conversion happening, there's an impact, and there's a scale. We still don't know whether all birds will decline. Some will be winners. Some definitely will be winners. For example, Indian grey hornbill is a clear winner. It is increasing like anything across India. Malabar grey hornbill is declining. So we need to identify the winners and losers. Among them, we also have to prioritize which one should be the one we should look at. For all these things, we need more research to find out where we should actually invest our conservation efforts. So this is an area where a lot of work can happen, all relevant for Kerala, and I hope that with multiple kinds of monitoring and combining data, we will be able to come out with policies which are really actionable on the field and monitorable on the field. This third one is an area where we heard a lot. I don't think much is happening here. We really need to know the life history traits. In terms of large-scale studies, we also, of course, have small studies, but we need to know large-scale studies. How much is the lifespan of birds? And breeding success, turnover, dispersal, activity budgets, what birds are doing, energy, which Anusha talked about, parasites, pox, flu, resistance, all these things are connected to the declines. We need to know more here. We don't even have baseline data here. Behavior, vocalization, and associations like what Abhijit was talking about. These frame of classical ornithology in Kerala, we don't have baseline data. Even in Western Ghats, we don't have baseline data. Now, it's not just baseline data which we are interested in. Everything is changing. All these factors are changing now. How much they are changing, that also we need to know. So look at it. All these items which you are talking about, I'm not going to read about. They are all changing through external factors here. Now we really need to know, are they going positive or negative? And if they're going negative, what is the seriousness of it? Whether they will recover or not. So this is a field where a lot of students in ornithology can actually either do research here, or we actually need people like Pankaj and Anusha and Robin and all to take students from here. Use Kerala as a place where the fundamental research is happening. Let them come with the best of methodologies and understand our habitats. And then that's a way in which these kind of ornithology can actually feed into valuable conservation action, which can actually save the birds which we are all loving up. This is another field. I'm not going to talk too much about it. There is a lot which has to be done here. We have services as well as disservices. So we really need to know what is happening in this particular space so that we can actually talk to policymakers and say that, okay, there was a great paper about vultures saying that if vulture population declined, and that has resulted in the feral dog population increasing here, and that has resulted in higher incidence of rabies. So these kind of stories which you can weave from birds to population declines to something on health and how it is actually impacting economy. That particular curve, if you draw it, people who have no connection to birds will be able to relate to them, saying that, okay, fine, there is an economic loss due to this, right? So those kind of studies also need to be done, at least in some places in Kerala. There has been some studies in peafowl, where they found how to mitigate peafowl and how you can actually save agriculture from the amount of crop damage which peafowls are doing. Quickly, avian parasitology. mentioned by a couple of people here. It's just started here. This is again a big field because these probably are some of the reasons why our birds are declining. We really need to know what's happening in this particular field. A lot more to be done. Roshna talked about it in her countries. He is planning to do it. But I think we can do a lot more here. So to sum it up, we are a fantastic place to root a laboratory on tropical ornithology. Kerala is the best place here. We are now having the amount of data which we require to do large scale analysis. We have some amount of research spread. I would not say a lot. We still have some amount of research spread. We have birdwatcher community extensively contributing to it, really willing to go that extra length to do scientific protocols. What we may need to discuss, what we may need to talk more is, what are those enabling policies through which we can make all these things happen, right? There are not too many tropical areas which have all these things lined up. Probably the only other tropical country I can think of is Taiwan, where all these things are lining up very nicely for a future research. But otherwise, everything happens in the global north. In global south, across India is difficult, but we are well poised. We have everything ready to make the next leap. So I think that's where I will leave the thought and take questions, have more discussions. Since I was talking about a field which I was not very comfortable with, I just still put the QR codes of the things which I am working, I'm passionate about. These are the QR codes for State of India's birds and BirdCon India. Feel free to scan it, visit the websites. Thank you very much.
Yeah, open to discussion now. Any questions or comments?
Hi Pravi. So you summed up a very nice talk by talking about enabling policies that can bridge these gaps that you're talking about. Can you give us like some suggestions, like what can be those policies leading up to such kind of research, or the mindset of doing certain research?
I'll make it try. So that was one discussion which we thought if we have time we should have as a group to figure out whether we can actually come out with some kind of a resolution from this meeting saying that, hey, this is what we are recommending from the ornithology perspective to the larger group, including policymakers. To pick one, right, the Wildlife Protection Act. Wildlife Protection Act does not have a very conservation basis. There is no way in which the research and hunting has been separated out. Now, if we could actually create a framework within the Wildlife Protection Act using the existing policies, but at least interpreting it that research is different from hunting, then that actually brings in a lot more power to the state forest departments to use that interpretation to give out permits which are important to understand our own birds. Some of the things which I have actually mentioned here cannot be done with just field ornithology. It actually needs to have collections, may not be killing birds, but at least taking birds in hand. These kind of things, if on the broader umbrella of Wildlife Protection Act, is still possible, but I think it's an interpretation or maybe a legal intervention where we actually challenge it and legally they give an interpretation saying that, yeah, this is what Wildlife Protection Act means for research, which means that the State Forest Department can actually make this research process much more enabling. That could be one direction. Secondly, there would be potentially ways in which the State Forest Department itself can run the process. So Wildlife Protection Act only gives a general guideline, but it doesn't say State Forest Department to say, for example, we will do once in a quarter research committee. Or it doesn't say that, oh, first time you come to a research committee, if you have 100 proposals, 70% has to be passed, 30% has to be declined. These kind of guidelines are not there in the Wildlife Protection Act. That's where the state can intervene and say that, yeah, I will have a research proposal committee every month. I will enable an online submission. I will not require you to go to Trivandrum and publish it in front of XYZ. These are things which can actually change in the current age, and these are the ways in which you could actually run the same process faster, so that people who are actually doing the research feel that, okay, fine, I got a grant I'm convinced that I will get the permit in 3 months, right? So if we are able to push these things in this direction, maybe we could make a start, and that will change the narrative. And we will start in one way, bring out some innovative policies. Others may learn from it. They may bring some other innovative policies, and we'll come together and see what is the way in which we can move forward. So I think we should. I think that was also Vishnu's idea, that we probably need to at least discuss it a little more in a broader context and come out with some kind of recommendations. Maybe after some questions, we can probably even discuss that further.
Thank you, Praveen, for a wonderful presentation. And actually, I didn't see the earlier part of it. I was a bit late. And the last few slides were very interesting. You showed some areas for research in future. But I think it's very absolutely necessary to do research on these areas, but we need visionary researchers with vision to guide our youngsters who are willing to do work in the field, to give them ideas if they don't have it themselves, to give them ideas in which way to research, which are the needed subjects to research and all that. Some of the youngsters who I know had been lucky to get a guide who let them do what they liked. So our research guides in the universities, colleges and other institutions, they need to know these things, and they should be able to guide the youngsters properly. There is tremendous talent and dedicated youngsters we have, and as you said, Kerala is an ideal place to do that. And that's what I think. And another thing about the permission you said, Vishnu will know that we had submitted for a vulture study project for 2 years, and we got permission for one month. So that's the sort of problem we have.
I think we are going in that the resolution direction already. That both comments are actually something which, as a community, we should speak out and say this is what we recommend. I don't know. Maybe you can already start noting down these things, and you're all okay. Yeah, I think one is definitely to figure out ways within the Wildlife Protection Act to enable the process to speed up. Right. That's first suggestion, which at least from your question, which you probably kind of agree with that, or can you add anything more? Is more or less what we. Increasingly getting difficult. So create a framework within the Wildlife Protection Act to actually enable faster movement of permits so that research can be enabled. And the second one is having some kind of a network through which the current set of, I don't know, I mean, basically your need, what you said was that we need somebody to have a guide, and there are people here who could be a guide, but they are probably not well connected to the research community. So we probably need an enabling framework for the research guides themselves so that they get plugged into the research happening elsewhere. Right? For example, Anusha talked about it, which none of us knew what was happening here. So we probably need an enabling framework by which the research guides in India are also leveled up to things happening elsewhere so that they can guide more effectively the students here, which could be one of the other resolutions. I mean, so in that way, I'm just opening up the floor open, like, are there things which you feel could go into that resolution from the festival, academic sessions, to the community, larger community, including policy makers, teachers, students, citizen scientists?
Okay, so I have a small question. So, at least in your opinion, what do you think is like the greatest difficulty we will be facing in making Kerala the best place for ornithology and the study of birds? So, what's the greatest difficulty that's not slowing down our progress in that, and how can we overcome that difficulty?
Yeah, so one is a difficulty, other is an opportunity, right? So I would say both. So difficulty, as we had discussed, some kind of field studies which require you to collect a specimen has to go through a a set of protocol which is cumbersome, which takes time, which has got hurdles on the way. That's what we discussed. But there is also a large opportunity. We have the greatest literacy in India, and we have the best spread of people in India. So all our villages have got BMCs, all biodiversity management committees, all the panchayats have got some kind of bird watchers, and all the people are more or less tuned towards nature in some way or other, either through education or through writings or whatever. They are all tuned to that. So if you are able to actually channel this large resource in the direction of research and understanding of nature, that itself will bring a lot of change in terms of the capacity which we can do research in Kerala. While we work with these hurdles of policy and things like that and try to figure out a way in which we could move faster. This doesn't happen in isolation, right? You can't go and teach only children. You also have to go and teach policymakers. You also have to tell all these things to the IAFS officers in Dehradun, saying that you are in a very big capacity positions. These things are happening here. You have to enable them, and this is what the requirement is from the community. So we have to talk at every level, not just look at the youngsters, look at even the people who are making decisions, and get this narrative going so that the entire process becomes faster. Question? David has a question.
Hi. Okay. It's an interesting question because in Kerala we are doing a lot of work together as a team. Like the Bird Festival is a classic example. There is a lot of NGO got together and we come together. But is it happening in other parts of India? Are there similar things like you spoke about? If you wanted to do collectively in India, if you want to pull it up to a policy level, one state can't do it. Especially if you talk from a political point of view, if Kerala puts something, it does not reach there. If you want to change Wildlife Protection Act. But if somebody decide from Gujarat or from other parts of Madhya Pradesh, they will be able to pull it up. This is better because I worked in the landscape. I know that if they say there's some powerful leaders or some powerful guys who works there, they can actually change. Even Wildlife Protection Act been changed. You might be knowing this for different reasons, but it can be done. But is it happening in other parts of India, or is it only in some small states like us?
I was hoping that it's not a tough question. David mentioned Gujarat, no? I hope everybody heard Gujarat. Saying that Kerala will not be able to do, Gujarat will be able to do it. So yeah, communities across India are working, having this kind of a community interaction where there are bird festivals happening. Many of the states have now got bird groups which are working here. Not at the scale as Kerala is, I think, but it's happening. So that has actually moved further. My impression here is that I also am not looking at changing the Wildlife Protection Act. I am looking at interpreting it in a way that it's different for research. So all these acts, if you really read the act, right, of course there are statements, but there is always a room for interpretation. If you are able to work within that room to interpret those statements and make use for research, that may need not have an India-wide change. That's the way I am actually coming from. So Wildlife Protection Act got changed after 50 years now. It's unlikely that it's going to be changed in the next 10 years. So that's something which probably difficult as you're mentioning. But I think there should be ways in which we can interpret these kind of things and bring the research angle into it. So yes, we have to work together. We have to work with all other states. But since this is a community which is more closely knit and we can actually, we have seen changes being brought by the community, perhaps we should start here and then let others join in. Yeah, there's some question.
Yeah, thank you, Praveen, for a wonderful talk, I would say, because this is the talk that we planned in the end of the academic session, that way as a way forward, where do we go? It came out very well. Thank you so much for taking this challenge. One thing I found out, the problem that we're talking about, the research issues and the Wildlife Protection Act and those kind of, it is across India, mostly faced with the research institutions in academics in India, everywhere. So the only problem is like Kerala has still much more advanced than any other states in India in terms of permission and the logistic. If you're looking at Tamil Nadu, where we worked, we have multiple level of permission issues, and some states are very fast, and some states have, there is no uniformity the way in which research permissions are carried out. But even in that case, I would say for example, the work that we done on capturing birds and mist netting, I think Kerala state has the very first set has given a permission to work on that. Otherwise, these works would not have been possible. But still, there are problems of the processing the request in terms of the timing and processing, and those kind of things need to be, and also to interpret the laws. How is we can include research separately from the hunting. So one thing is to work at a national level where the research institutions who are working on ornithology or whatever has to come together and to look for a possible negotiation for bringing up this at a national level. That could be one strategy. Quite often I found that many of the academic institutes that works in India are not that closely working with the forest department. So when I work with the forest department very closely, we often used to give a feedback to the department. Department often says that many people are working in the field, never give a feedback to the policies and reports. So it comes only into the research institutions or the individual researchers. That is not the way, because department might also be interested in knowing what is happening in those kind of things. In that way, there should be also be a kind of a signal from the research institutions towards bringing up, because anyway they are facing the problem, and the problem is across India in multiple states, different nodes. So that is one step that we had, how best we can bring up all these researchers into some single platform so that we can build upon that and to come up with this changes and more clarity. And there are many other points other than this, basically looking at Kerala ornithology that we rightly pointed out, the bringing up the more deeper ecological studies that we have to undertake. The whole idea of tropical ornithology research in Kerala has come out as a very, very, very good idea that we have to take up, because we have traveled all the way compared to other states in India, like much more travel with a good data set and all. It's time for going deeper into the research and coming out with the conservation strategies. So as he rightly pointed out, leading to conservation actions. So that is something we have to seriously coming out and create a platform, like the whole set of maybe 1,000 plus bird watchers and researchers and things like that. But when we look from a research point of view, Kerala academic institutes are much more not that much into ornithological research.
Yep.
The ornithology research in Kerala is mostly driven by outside the academic institutions. If you're looking at counting the number of research papers coming out from the so-called research institute, it is very, very few. So I think in future also it is going to be the group of bird watchers or people who are working outside will be contributing, and I think it is the best way that we develop a strategy for working on than any academic institutions. And if you're looking at the TPGRA or KFRA or any universities, I think these are not comes under any kind of priorities. Mostly the ecology is completely neglected science in Kerala. So these are some of the challenges that we have to see, and we have to frame the ornithological research in such a way that we will go much more beyond from the current thing. So all these can bring in, and I would suggest after the question and answer session, we'll sit together and frame the recommendations for the future. So that's my comment on that.
Yeah, I think anybody who is interested in this framing of the resolution, feel free to join. And it ties up to what Shashima sir also saying, that we probably need a way in which we need research to happen here. I mean, I understand that it's currently happening elsewhere there, but we have to have research here also. So have some way in which we can actually enable that as well, so that ICER is there in Trivandrum. There is no much of ornithology coming out there from right now, right? So we have to frame mechanisms here. I don't know, we have to attract talent.
Hi, Praveen.
Yep.
You mentioned about need for focus on ecosystem services. I'm interested in finding out if there are already studies on ecosystem services, for example, pollination, insects, and the pesticide usage.
I am not the right person to say about this, but I only know about one work in Kerala which is done in P4, which is about a crop damage. Pollination work in Kerala, I am not aware.
But in general, insect population, how it's affecting insect population?
Insect population and connection to birds in India, no work. That's something which has to be done urgently. The other one, definitely, which I talked about, is the rabies case of how the vulture decline has impacted it. That was one ecosystem service that came out. I don't think there is too much happening. I don't know if others can comment here. If you know if there are ecosystem services based paper which are happening. Pollination, I can 100% sure. Nothing I have seen for a long time.
Also, you mentioned about the forest species, whether they are getting affected by the insect population.
So that's something which we keeps coming up in many places, saying that we have to do it. I'm aware of, I think maybe Prita would definitely know, there is a community which has now come together to set up insect decline monitoring stations across India. You are probably part of it. And that probably will create the first baseline data that insects are declining and what insects are declining. If you could also add a bird component there, not regularly, but as a bird component there, we will be able to know in those plots what's happening to the insectivorous birds when you see that these insects are declining. For example, in State of India's birds, if you look at the insectivore birds which are declining, the greatest decline from State of India's birds is understory insectivore. Then the next level, babblers can, then canopy insectivores which are more or less stable, aerial insectivores, no impact. Now, less of data, if the moment you start segregating like this, data becomes smaller and smaller. We don't know whether that's right or not. But we need to know, is it happening that way in insects also? Is it the insect decline more in the forest floor compared to aerial? We don't know. So I think we probably have a lot to do, but there are opportunities coming up where we can have cross-taxa research, where we can do both insect and birds together and do something about it.
And also ecotoxicology. Are there any groups working on ecotoxicology in Kerala?
Anybody knows? As far as I know, no. The only ecotoxicology which we have till now attacked is the vulture diclofenac issue and all the NSIDs. That's the one which everybody knows. Other than that, ecotoxicology across India also studies are.
Dr. Murali in Sakon was doing some work on
Anything published there?
Published, I think so. I think so.
They have a good lab out there,
Lab, yeah.
which is a very recent lab.
But for vulture, the carcass sample testing, we approached them, but it was quite expensive.
Yeah, yeah. I think those are also something which we probably need to also add in the resolution. Having affordable labs which can actually support these kind of networks, so that we don't have to send to somewhere else and wait for the queue. So we probably should also have some kind of a budgeting from, I don't know, the Kerala Science, the KST, what is that? The what?
STEC.
Yeah. So I mean, they have
Technology Committee.
there could be some kind of a guidance to route the funds so that these institutes have those lab facilities within Kerala, so that we don't have to go elsewhere. Yeah, I understand there are challenges. Drishnu was already saying like this, but we know there are challenges, but we have to change the narrative.
Regarding pollination, Salim Ali had written an old paper, Sagaram had been on flower birds and bird flowers, I think. It was a very interesting paper written sometime in the 1950s. Then, to my knowledge, Dr. Priya Davida was the only person who put it in study.
Nilgiris, yeah.
So that's the gap. Yeah. That's in the 1980s.
Correct.
So after that, nothing. That's the problem.
Yeah. Frugivores, there's some work going on in India. Frugivores and seed dispersal, how the hornbills are actually helping the frugivores. Why is, for example, Andaman, Nicobar Islands, which doesn't have a single barbet, single hornbill, how is that forest spreading? Is pigeons and parakeet replacing them? So there is some study going on in the frugivore world, not much in the flowering world, I think.
Thank you, Praveen, for the wonderful talk. As we had initially discussed in the academic committee, the idea was to start off with history, talk about current projects, and then give us a sense of where our research has progressed over time and where we stand. So rather than, so we have a session, I think, after this where we bring together different ideas to see what we can put forth. But as you already mentioned, we have a huge stronghold in Kerala in terms of enthusiasts, bird researchers who really want to contribute, who can go that extra length to contribute. So if because you've already done this work, and yesterday we mentioned about KK Neelakantan's contribution, not only in the Kerala's perspective, even if you put it at a national scale, the way he's written it, the way he has approached ornithology, popularized it, yet not compromising on the scientific integrity and you know at the depths he has gone to. So I think if we could bring all these materials together, the references, we could just put it out there for people to trace where we are. So that perspective of where our research is with respect to the rest of it, that itself will give us, I feel, a lot of motivation to see where the lacunas are, where the opportunities are, where our stronghold is, and so on. So I hope we can just bring all this information together to I think circulate among the huge crowd of bird enthusiasts in Kerala. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think good idea related to how to actually, energize people to do more, right? So I think that's something which could also go into the resolution of it, how we can get archives, I can get all these things together to bring the Kerala, the story out in terms of birds, and at what point in time, what happened, and what were the enablers there, what were the challenges there, how they were overcome, how they were not overcome, and bringing up together into one coherent story. Maybe also have a sociology perspective, how these birdwatcher networks happen and how they propagate and how they copy each other. So I think those kind of a story will actually make sense till the 2025.
Hello, sir. You were talking about that promote the species, like, for example, vultures. According to their services, if some of the species are not visible, their ecosystem services, did you face any challenges like that? Some of the species which is endangered or close to extinction, which doesn't make any huge ecosystem services. Did you face to promote that species to the department or to the stakeholders and other authorities? Did you face any challenges, or how to tackle those problems when we found that species is going to be extinct, but it is not making huge kind of ecosystem services? What you do that in that situation?
It's right here, Banasura laughing thrush, right? We don't know what the ecosystem service Banasura laughing thrush bring to Wayanad, right? How do you tackle it? So Vishnu and others must have influenced and made the district bird. Okay, it's not a species everybody sees, but it is leveled up that people now realize, oh, Banasura laughing thrush is found nowhere else in the world but only in Wayanad. Now there is some amount of some passion that, oh, okay, something which is only mine cannot be lost, right? So it's hard, really very hard to get ecosystem services for a single species or even a species family. Pollinators, yes, all pollinators, you can bring some ecosystem services. All frugivore birds, you can do. But a single species bringing an ecosystem service is difficult. That's when we have to use this flagship and popular stories to bring out that notion that every species is important. If you are losing it, you are losing a part of yours. So I think, hopefully, Vishnu, that after you have made now the district bird, people will start feeling passionate about this particular species. Though I am sure that 99% of people will live and die without seeing that bird.
Yeah, even I see that many people are talking about that bird. Vanasura Chalapel, this is the Vanasura Chalapel during our bird festival as well.
Exactly. So it has become your bird, right?
Yeah, but we got the advantage of that. That's how being an endemic species. But in case of it is not an endemic, a little bit difficult.
It's a very tough challenge. The ecosystem services also got the negative effect. The moment you put an ecosystem services, you are putting a value to a bird, which means you can purchase that. You can actually show that something else has got a bigger service than this ecosystem service. So it's a double-edged sword, played carefully. That's why like Kunjikrishan sir will say that forest is something which is of a value which is not measurable. So the moment you say you can't measure forest, then you put the economics out of it. Then you cannot actually say that, okay, I can replace the forest with something else. So sometimes these ecosystem services can actually bring a lot of disservice to the bird itself. But every policymaker will ask that. Every policymaker asks, so what? Okay, fine, you are saying it's declining. So what? The so what question will come up where some of these narratives will actually help them. There are good people as policymakers. They actually want to take a decision. They want to convince other people saying that we have to take the decision. So we have to give them some weapon to use. And then you can say that, okay, if you did, vultures are declining, rabies is increasing, so we need to preserve it. The story sells and it progresses. So we probably need these numbers also, while also realizing that that cannot be the only number on which we can start conservation.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add something, what you just mentioned about ecosystem services. See, I think we have something, this is one way of looking at nature around us, giving it a value. And this was mainly done in the time when there was a lot of economic pressures. So tell them that ecological values are not just ecological, but they also have economic importance. But then there is something called inherent value of a species. We are just one of the millions. We have not even documented how many species are there on Earth. And we even don't know what constitutes a species. So we are talking about values and things like that. But who are we to decide which species has to be there and which has not to be there? Every species has got its own value because it is there. We are only one among the species on Earth, and it's our moral responsibility, ethical responsibility to see that we preserve everything that we can, and we don't overuse resources and things like that. Okay, so I think I just wanted to mention that, but I also wanted to say something about the research priorities. See, we have been talking more about institutional university-based research. That is definitely very important, but also it has a limitation. Like yesterday when we were talking with Pramod, he was saying that there is no long-term studies which are being done by institution because funding runs out and then the people move out and then there is no research. But it is also possible by individuals, and Kerala has got such a large base of committed ornithologists, amateur ornithologists, but may not be professional, but there are people who are as good as professional ornithologists. They have time at the hand. I think we should harness their potential and their capabilities and get work done wherever they are. I think one of the things with bird watchers is that they want to see rare species all the time, but instead of running after rare species, if there is some black heron, African black heron coming to Kasargod, everyone flocks there. Instead of that, if people can stay wherever they are and monitor their own areas long term, because researches that is being done through universities last for 2 years, 3 years, maximum 4 years. After that, the researcher has changed his idea and he is going into a totally different field, or maybe he is going into teaching or something like that. And the amount of information that we have may not be valid because we have taken a small snapshot of what is there, which may not be valid for environmental conditions that are changing. So we need continuous monitoring. Can we not have identify certain habitats and have people who are there to continuously monitor what is going on in their own area throughout? And this should be something which goes for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Yeah. I think this is something which is practical. We don't have to go for permissions. We don't have to look for funding. It's just the passion of the person which can drive this. So I think we should think of this also in addition to the regular research. If that can be done, I think it will be a great thing. So we have the potential. We don't need to invest on anything. Just motivate the people to do it. Their own backyard or their own neighborhood. Take one place, and that should be their, what we call patch birding. I think that will yield a lot of information, because once you start monitoring, you start getting the first feel, okay, the species that was there earlier has stopped coming. What is the reason? And that could lead to a better understanding of what is happening in other places. Yep. So we should probably do this for the entire country, but at least we can start with Kerala.
Yeah. So just to add to what Dr. Shantaram said, patch monitoring is going on in a few places in Kerala continuously for past 5 years, but it has been a hard sell. It has been a hard sell because person has to feel motivated to do it again and again. But what we have seen is that communities are feeling very motivated. So the moment you have a community, there will always be a replaceable member who will come and continue the work. So if you can have some kind of a resolution to encourage communities to do long-term systematic monitoring in a place of their choice. Campus, Hume's campus, for example. Hume's campus cannot work with one person. It can be a community who will keep monitoring it. So if we can have encourage communities to do long-term systematic monitoring, definitely I think it has a great scope here. So Kottayam Nature Society is a great community. Do Emerald bird count on January every year for the past 26 years. So that they're doing. And people have changed. I don't think you lead now anymore and somebody else is doing all the organization here. So people have changed, but the community has taken over. It's their work. They continue it.
Yeah. So if there are no further comments or suggestions or questions, we will end this session officially, but then we will stay back and we will work out on what kind of policies and further discussions on what we can take over from this, the carryover from this for the administrators and so please stay back, all those people who are really interested. Thank you. Thank you, Praveen. It was a great presentation.
Thank you, Shankaram sir. So we are going to have a panel discussion now and we'll have the chairs on that.